Welcome to the History AI podcast, where the past comes alive with facts, anecdotes, and a dash of humor. Here are your hosts, Chuck and Marco.
London, 1837. Queen Victoria has just taken the throne. The British Empire is expanding across the globe. Factories are roaring. Railroads are changing travel forever. And yet, for all the progress of the age, London at night still feels medieval.
That's something people forget. Victorian London was modern in some ways, but once darkness fell, huge sections of the city became dangerous and almost impossible to police. Streets were poorly lit. Thick fog mixed with coal smoke from thousands of chimneys. Crime was everywhere,
And the city itself was exploding in size. By the late 1830s, London had become the largest city in the world. Millions of people packed together in narrow streets created the perfect environment for rumors, fear, and panic to spread.
which is exactly what happened when stories began circulating about a strange figure attacking people in the dark. A figure witnesses claimed could leap impossible heights, survive impossible falls, and even breathe blue flames.
This is the story of Spring-Heeled Jack, one of the strangest and most famous urban legends in British history.
And unlike a lot of old legends, this one didn't begin in the Middle Ages or ancient times. This happened during the age of newspapers, police reports, and recorded witness statements.
Which makes it even weirder.
The first major wave of sightings began in 1837, mostly around the outskirts of London in areas like Clapham and Limehouse. According to reports from the time, several women claimed they had been attacked by a bizarre figure lurking in dark streets and alleys.
One of the earliest and most famous accounts came from a servant girl named Mary Stevens. She reported that while walking through Clapham Common late at night, a figure suddenly jumped out from a dark alley and grabbed her.
She later described the attacker as having cold, claw-like hands and wearing some kind of dark clothing. She managed to escape after screaming for help, but what made her story important was that other witnesses soon began reporting similar encounters.
And these weren't identical stories copied word for word. Different witnesses described different details, but certain things appeared over and over again. The glowing eyes, the unnatural jumps, the strange appearance.
Then came the incident that truly pushed the story into national headlines.
In January of 1838, a young woman named Jane Alsop answered a knock at the door of her family home in the Whitechapel area of London.
The man outside claimed to be a police officer. He told her they had captured Spring-Heeled Jack and needed a candle immediately.
Jane brought the candle to the doorway, and according to her testimony, the figure suddenly threw off a cloak and revealed a terrifying appearance.
She later described him as having large glowing eyes and wearing a tight-fitting garment covered in what looked like white oilskin. Then came the detail that made the legend famous.
She claimed he breathed blue and white flames directly into her face.
The figure then attacked her with what she described as metallic claws before family members rushed to help and scared the attacker away.
Just days later, another woman named Lucy Scales reported a similar encounter. She and her sister were walking through an alley in Limehouse when a tall figure appeared and breathed blue flames into her face, causing her to collapse in terror.
Now suddenly, this wasn't just gossip anymore. Newspapers across Britain picked up the story. And Victorian newspapers absolutely loved sensational crime stories.
The Morning Advertiser, The Times, and other London papers began printing increasingly dramatic accounts of Spring-Heeled Jack sightings. Some reports were likely exaggerated, but the sheer number of stories convinced many people that something real was happening.
And the public reaction was intense. Crowds formed vigilante groups. Men patrolled streets at night, armed with pistols and clubs, hoping to catch the mysterious attacker.
The panic became so widespread that Sir John Cowan, the Lord Mayor of London, addressed the issue publicly during a Mansion House meeting in January 1838.
That's important historically, because it shows how seriously the reports were being taken at the time. This wasn't just campfire storytelling. City leadership was openly discussing the attacks.
According to accounts from the meeting, the Lord Mayor mentioned receiving letters describing a ghost, bear, or devil that had been terrifying neighborhoods around London.
Some witnesses claimed Spring-Heeled Jack could leap over walls 9 feet high. Others described him escaping by jumping from rooftop to rooftop.
which is where the name came from. People began calling him Spring-Heeled Jack because they believed he had some mechanical or supernatural ability that allowed him to spring enormous distances.
Now here's where history gets complicated. As the legend spread, the descriptions became more exaggerated. Early reports focused mostly on assaults and frightening encounters. Later stories began portraying Spring-Heeled Jack almost like a supernatural creature.
Some witnesses described pointed ears, glowing red eyes, and devilish features. Others claimed he wore armor or a helmet. There were even stories that bullets couldn't stop him.
And over time, the sightings spread far beyond London. Reports appeared in Liverpool, Sheffield, the Midlands, and even parts of Scotland.
One of the most famous later incidents occurred in 1877 at Aldershot Barracks. Soldiers reportedly saw a strange figure leap over a wall and slap one of the sentries before disappearing into the night.
What makes the Spring-Heeled Jack story fascinating historically is that it sits right on the border between folklore and modern media hysteria.
Exactly. Britain in the 1830s was becoming increasingly connected through newspapers and railroads. Stories spread faster than ever before. A sighting in London could become national news within days.
And once the image of Spring-Heeled Jack entered the public imagination, people began interpreting strange events through that lens.
There have been a lot of theories over the years about who or what Spring-Heeled Jack really was.
One of the earliest theories blamed an Irish nobleman named the Marquis of Waterford. He was known for drunken pranks, reckless behaviour, and causing chaos around London society.
But historians have never found hard evidence linking him directly to the attacks. Most modern researchers think that theory probably grew because Victorian society loved blaming scandalous aristocrats for public disorder.
Other theories suggest Spring-Heeled Jack may have been multiple people. Once the panic spread, copycats could easily imitate the attacks using costumes and chemicals.
And the blue flames themselves may not have been impossible. Certain chemical mixtures available at the time could create blue fire effects, especially for stage performers.
Then there's the simpler explanation: mass hysteria.
Victorian London already lived in fear of crime. Women walking alone at night faced real danger. Add sensational newspapers and public panic, and suddenly every shadow starts looking like Spring-Heeled Jack.
But even if that's true, it doesn't fully explain why the story lasted so long.
Because Spring-Heeled Jack didn't disappear after the 1830s. He became part of British popular culture. Penny dreadfuls turned him into a fictional antihero and villain. Stage plays featured him. Cheap illustrated magazines spread his image across the country.
In some stories, he became almost supernatural. In others, he was portrayed more like a masked avenger. The real reports slowly blended with fiction until separating truth from legend became almost impossible.
And honestly, that transformation may be the most important part of the story historically.
Because Spring-Heeled Jack may have been one of the first true modern urban legends. A figure created and sustained not just by oral storytelling, but by mass media.
Long before modern horror movies, comic books, or internet creepypastas, Victorian Britain had Spring-Heeled Jack.
A mysterious figure in the fog, half criminal, half monster, and entirely unforgettable.
Nearly 200 years later, nobody knows for certain who the original Spring-Heeled Jack was.
There was never an arrest, never a confession, never a clear explanation.
Just frightened witnesses, sensational newspapers, and a city struggling to understand what it had seen.
And maybe that uncertainty is exactly why the legend survived.
Because history isn't always clean and explainable. Sometimes fear itself becomes part of the story.
And in Victorian London, fear wore glowing eyes and leapt through the fog.
Thanks for listening to the History AI podcast, the first ever completely AI-generated history podcast where we dig into the stories, battles, mysteries, and forgotten figures that shaped the world around us.
And remember, every episode we make is evergreen. Whether you're listening the day this releases or finding this episode years from now during a late-night history binge, these stories are always waiting for you.
So if you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to follow the show, leave us a rating, and share it with somebody else who loves history, mysteries, and the strange corners of the past.
And if you want to support the show even further, check out our merch. We've got History AI podcast gear, along with designs inspired by history, legends, battles, music, and more.
We also love hearing from all of you. Send us your episode ideas, historical mysteries you want covered, or forgotten stories you think deserve more attention.
And stay tuned after the episode for the original song, inspired by today's story, Flames in the Fog.
See you next time.
Sleeping under blacker skies, gaslight flickers in the riverside. Footsteps echo down the cobbled lane. Then the silence breaks like pouring rain. Girls in white with their hearts in their throats, hear a laugh drifting through their coats. A crimson figure with burning eyes leaves the rooftops and disappears at night. No chains can hold him, no walls too tall. One scream in the darkness, and the city stalls. Flames in the fog, and a devil on the run. Spring-heeled Jack comes laughing through the smoke. Before the dawn, claws on the windows, hellfire in his grin. Nobody knows where the monster ends or where the myth begins. Flames in the fog, flames in the fog. Papers printed every twisted tale. Children whisper names behind the veil. Some say demon, some say wealthy man. Some say England never understood what happened then. Flames in the fog. Maybe he was madness, maybe just a lie, born from fear and smoke beneath Victorian skies. But legends never die, they only learn to hide. And somewhere in old London he still walks at night. Tapping on the glass, hear the footsteps moving fast. By the time you turn around, he's above you looking down. Flames in the fog, still haunting everyone. Spring-heeled Jack keeps running through the centuries unknown. Old streets remember every frightened soul. The thing that jumped across the rooftops through the bitter cold. Flames in the fog, flames in the fog. So if you hear laughter through the midnight smog, don't look too long at the flames in the fog.